What makes a savior? Is it someone that promises heaven on earth, or someone who burns the present down to forge the future? For Zaun, Silco might have been both. Today we're going to talk about how Silco actually saved Zaun, yet no one noticed. There will be minor spoilers for season 2, so if you haven't watched it, proceed in this video with caution. Sadly, probably the best series on Netflix hands down concluded a few weeks ago, and one thing's for sure, it will definitely be missed. For a multitude of reasons. Its stunning visuals and animation, its deep storytelling, the majestic lore, but most importantly, its complex and awesome characters. I've got to hand it to this show. Each character served an integral role to the story, and each of them had believable motivations, and their struggles felt raw and relatable. And I want to emphasize again that each of the characters in the story served an important role in the plot. Even characters you think are irrelevant, like the character that Vander saves from a bad deal in the beginning of the show. He later saved Vi and becomes the first of Victor's gloriously evolved commune. And this just goes to show the level of attention to detail that the writers of the show put into crafting the characters. And by far one of the most important characters of the show is Silco. From the moment we were introduced to Silco, he had this air of sinister villainy to him, with the dark visuals and disfigured eye. He was also a hugely calm and calculative man, a tactical mind who managed to run his own dealings free from Vander's and the Enforcer's interference. And after he successfully got rid of Vander, although Powder really helped him with that one, he became the de facto leader of the Undercity, running the underground according to his vision. Let's talk about Silco's ambition. Now, despite Silco being a ruthless criminal and just a complete a-hole, he had a clear vision of what he wanted for the Undercity. He wanted it to be independent of the topside, a nation that was free from the whims and decisions of the counselors and their enforcers, the nation of Zaun. That had always been his mission from day one, and Vander actually shared that vision with him, which is what led them to enact the first uprising against topside. This uprising ultimately failed, leaving several Zaunites dead, including Vi and Powder's mom, who was, at the time, Vander's very close friend. This massacre of his own people led Vander to lose his resolve, as he saw it as kind of his fault. He came to terms that the Undercity would never successfully be independent of topside, and thus he resorted to let peace reign and make deals instead. Deals that, while did not necessarily make things better, at least ensured relative peace throughout Piltover. Silco was not having this. Now, Silco might be a calm and collected individual, but he's undoubtedly an extremely resolute person, second only to probably Mbessa. Silco was so consumed by his vision of Zaun that he stopped at absolutely nothing to see it come to fruition. He set no boundaries and restrictions as to what the cost was to achieve this, and the effect was greatly felt all over Piltover, both topside and bottom. Because of their differences, Silco and Vander had a falling out. Vander wanted peace and Silco wanted explosions and Shimmer. The result of that was a ruthless criminal mastermind who had the creepy glowing eye aesthetic going for him. And many people made the argument that Zaun was peaceful while Vander was the de facto leader, but was Vander a good leader, really? This question is important because the answer lets us know whether or not Zaun needed a savior in the first place, whether or not Silco's actions were just the actions of an overzealous psychopath. The thing is, most people don't even know why the Undercity wants to be independent. Like, really, exactly why do they want their independence? Is it that the Enforcers go down there every once in a while and just beat up folks just cuz? Is it that Piltover is colonizing Zaun? What exactly has Topside done to the Undercity? And if you notice, I've been calling Zaun the Undercity interchangeably. That's because Zaun is literally beneath the Topside. They are geographically connected. The people of Zaun are the people of Piltover. They're not different people. They are in fact one and the same. Jace even said it himself when addressing the counselors. He said, "They may not be your preferred constituents, but they're still your people." With that being said, the Undercity dwellers are being oppressed in every single way imaginable, every day of their lives. I am not even joking when I say every single way imaginable. It is horrifying, and it is probably the most extreme representation of what an unfair class structure looks like. This friendly Reddit user online has highlighted some of the injustices against the Undercity, and we're going to go over them. them. First, Piltover has constructed their pipes to direct all their waste into Zaun, exposing the people there to dangerous waste materials. And just with one look at the Undercity, you can easily tell it's not the tidiest place to live. This reality of unhygienic living is partly or even largely because of Topside. Workers in sectors like mining aren't protected against dangerous working conditions, like the gas in the fissures that is so dense and toxic that it can quite literally kill the average person faster than the exhaust from an 80s sports car. This gas is so toxic that within mere moments of being exposed to it, Finn had begun gasping for fresh air desperately. There's also the fact that the justice system works differently for those in the Undercity than those in Topside. How many times in the series have we seen the sheriff or other enforcers basically incarcerate Undercity dwellers in Stillwater indefinitely? It happened to Vi, it happened to Silco's henchmen, and I'm sure it's the case for other Undercity dwellers as well. I am willing to bet a good pancake breakfast that that's not the case for the average Topsider. Perhaps even more criminal is the fact that the enforcers can basically harass Undercity dwellers however they please without consequence. For them, abusing their authority is less about law and order and more about flexing their unchecked power. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, who knows how many more injustices are faced by the people of Zaun, when fresh air, the most basic right, isn't being met. It's sickening to think that the counselors and other Topsiders could live comfortably with this level of human suffering happening right beneath them. And I guess that's what Silco's sick of as well. He reckoned that if Topside was going to use labor and resources from the Undercity without providing the most basic human needs for them, they might as well cut ties, which was exactly his plan. But he knew that Topside was more powerful. They had intentionally made it that way for the longest time. So he had to give Zaun some power of their own, and that's what led to the creation of Shimmer. You see, the common misconception is that Shimmer was a drug created by Silco to strengthen his forces and make money while at it. Those two are true, but there was a third motive with Shimmer: strengthening Zaun's economy. For the longest time, the Undercity's economy had been at the mercy of Topside. They had no infrastructure or capital industry of their own. They were mainly responsible for mining Piltover's resources and handed it over to the Topside for manufacturing and refining. And from what we've seen in Progress Day, Piltover has made quite the strides as a nation. They have exotic and fancy architectural buildings. They have modern and cutting-edge weaponry, and more recently, they have hex tech. While Zaun, well, they have bars and whorehouses. Silco knew this was a dangerous power gap, so he had to empower the Undercity somehow, and that's why he created Shimmer, a drug that could serve as a weapon to strengthen his forces and also serve as a straight export for Zaun to strengthen their independent economy. As we see in the show, Topsiders as high as even counselors use the drug, not to mention exports outside the country. However, it's unfortunate that this was what he settled on, because I'm sure if he wanted to, he could have come up with a less destructive way of empowering the Undercity than riddling it with a drug so dangerous it literally turns people into mutants. But it's no surprise, Silco was so consumed by his rage against Topside that he had become a clearly maniacal individual. That said, Shimmer did have the effect he wanted, but at a severe cost. The people were more tense than ever because of all the junkies sprouting everywhere, and the literal mutants who guarded Silco from competitors like the other chem barons. Crime rates tripled in the Undercity, and more parents lost their children than ever in decades. It was a truly terrifying time in the Undercity. However, there's one thing I haven't mentioned, a fourth use case for Silco's Shimmer. Before Silco, Zaun was divided into gangs and factions that could easily be controlled by Topside, but when Silco showed up, things started to change. He used the newfound power that Shimmer gave him to unite the people of Zaun and rule over them as their kingpin. Now, while this was not appreciated by many people, it served an important role and brought about a central figure that the whole of Zaun could look up to as their leader. And this makes perfect sense. A cause without a clear leader is a dead cause, and if the Undercity was ever going to leave Topside's tyrannical rule, they would need one. Silco played that role perfectly. That is, until someone got in the picture. Jinx was Silco's finest weapon, just as she was his biggest opening, although I guess we could say the same about most kids. Silco took Jinx in and nurtured her talents to become the ruthless criminal she grew up to become. Fared literally all over Piltover, he somehow managed to turn her trauma into destructive creativity, and more importantly, he took her as his own daughter. Because of this, Jinx was fiercely loyal to him, carrying out his wishes without question and ruthlessly. Jinx ended up becoming Zaun's most chaotic force, and that led to a whole series of wild events that would eventually shape Zaun's future. However, it's important to note that more often than not, Jinx was a thorn at his side as well. She could become erratic on a whim, and she was literally seeing ghosts. She was a loose cannon, and Silco knew this. Jinx stole Hextech and bombed Piltover infrastructure, and we all saw how wildly this escalated to tension between the Undercity and Topside. She didn't stop at that though. She killed several enforcers while at it, a slap on Topside's face and a blatant act of rebellion. However, Jinx stealing the gemstones was by far the most dangerous threat to the Topside, because if they had the ingenuity to create bombs and gadgets that could take them by surprise, who knows what they could do with Hextech. This led Topside into frantic panic, with some of the counselors suggesting they use Hextech to intimidate the Undercity dwellers, and others suggesting they use enforcers to raid them. However, because of voices of reason like Mel on the council, they resorted to use the latter option, using the enforcers to tout in trade routes and intimidate Silco. That didn't work quite well though, and when Jinx managed to secure the Hextech gemstones again, after the battle at Piltover Bridge, Vi convinces Jace to use Hextech instead to stop Silco. This was actually a good thing, because after Jace saw what it was like down there, the Shimmer factories, the monsters it created, the death of little children won by his own hand, he decided that enough was enough. Jace agreed to parlay with Silco because he didn't have the stomach to engage in an all-out war with Zaun using Hextech. He knew there would be far too much bloodshed. The gods finally had given Silco what he wanted on a platter of gold. Jace offered to give Zaun its independence as well as unrestricted access to the Hex Gates, and all he would get in return would be Jinx. Silco's years of planning and tough decisions had paid off. He had earned Zaun's independence, but there was a catch. He would have to give up his daughter. And by this point, Silco loved Jinx more than his own vision for Zaun, and in a poetic twist of fate, he found himself unable to surrender her, just as Vander couldn't bring himself to give up his own children. And this is really important because it shows us that Silco isn't in fact just about his vision, because his love for Jinx outweighed it. After Jinx murdered Silco with her own hands, however, she felt a deep sense of regret when he told her he would have never given her up. This agonizing grief, alongside her mental disorders, caused her to blast a Hextech beam at the seat of the counselors, thus murdering 3 in the process. From this moment on, Jinx became a symbol of rebellion for Zaun, as we see in Act 1 of Season 2, and it united the Undercity even after Silco's death. After Jinx's attack, enforcers began raiding the Undercity, and this just further aggravated the Zaunite resistance. Ultimately, at the end of Season 2, thanks to Zaun's show of strength and might, Topside was forced to partner with them to stop Victor's glorious evolution. And by the end of the show, we see them, in the person of Savika, get their own seat in the council. Does this correct all the wrong that's been done against Zaun? For me, it doesn't. But is it a start to a brighter future? It definitely is. And none of it would have been possible without Silco. Silco was a tyrant, a visionary, a father, and a monster. But most importantly, he was the spark that ignited Zaun's fight for freedom. Yet no one ever talks about that fact enough. Anyway, what do you think? Would Zaun have thrived without Silco, or was his destruction the price of their liberation? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, as it really helps the channel grow, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching. Bye.